young women are being verbally and mentally abused by their mother-in-laws and also completely ignored by their husbands. I live with my husband's family and I'm constantly made to feel like a slave by his parents, to work to please him and them whilst he rests from the stresses of a hard day's work. I look after the house and children, but nothing is ever good enough for his parents. I am told that it is my duty to treat my husband as a god, a Pati Parmeshwar. They are very religious, they pray constantly, but still play politics in the family to create a rift between me and my husband, whilst he continues to ignore the faults of his parents. Is this right? I can't tell you the number of times that I've received a question of this nature where young women are being verbally and mentally abused by their mother-in-laws and also completely ignored by their husbands. And we talked about some of the problems within Indian culture and society. I would say this is probably at the very top of that list of problems. And a lot of the times people feel completely stuck. They don't know what it is that they can do. And my response to that is at some point you have to be able to make a conscious decision. Where do I draw the line? At what point is it enough for me? The reason why people stay in these situations for too long is I think that they are constantly carrying around a false sense of hope that the other person will change. If I do this, the other person will change. If I keep making compromises, the other person is eventually going to see that I'm making that effort. And what I always try and get people to reflect on is at what point will you realize that perhaps the other person isn't going to change? And be comfortable now with the fact that you can't change other people.
Yeah.
You can try to change yourself, but don't keep holding on to the hope that the other person is going to change.
Especially if they're not looking to change or willing to change.
If they're not willing to change, then there's nothing you're going to do that's going to make them now realize that you're not worthy of that abuse.
And we can only change ourselves. We can't change anybody.
And if you've compromised enough, at some point you're going to have to ask yourself this very important question: can I live with who they are right now?
And can I keep doing this?
Can I keep doing this? At some point, if you realize that the other person isn't going to change, how does that make me feel? Can I stay within that situation? And if you decide that enough is enough, there is no reason for you to carry on staying within that situation, because it doesn't matter what other people think. It isn't about whether your life is going to be harder or whether there's other people whose opinions you're going to have to face. You have to ask yourself this question: can I live with this right now? And then at some point it's a simple yes or no.
You're the only one that can make the situation better for yourself. And you're the only one that can lift yourself out by making that decision.
Of course, it becomes so much more complicated when there are children involved.
Yeah.
But even your children living in a family where abuse is prevalent, that's abuse to the children.
Yeah. And what we're doing actually is creating more possible perpetrators, because all they can see is abuse or unsettlement, an unhealthy environment.
It normalizes it.
It normalizes it.
It isn't for anyone else to tell you that you should definitely get up and leave the relationship. You know, leaving might be the very last thing that you do. Maybe you do try and approach an independent third party who can intervene and talk to both sides. Maybe you do try counseling, or you try any other methods of communication. But it has to be action that delivers some progress.
Yeah.
And if there's no progress, no matter how much effort you've put in, at some point you're just going to have to decide.
You have to decide, yeah. I mean, we're in a generation now where we don't have to keep living what our grandparents lived or even our parents. We don't have to stay stuck in that situation, because now we have more choices, there are more options, there are safe homes, there are support charities, the people's mindsets have evolved. You don't need to just be burdened in this situation because you feel there's nothing out there.
And I guess that was one of the main reasons growing up. Our parents wanted us to get educated. They wanted us to be independent so that you're not trapped. But I wonder if through that whole process, our tolerance level has significantly reduced compared to our parents' generation. I mean, we hear how mother-in-laws are demonized in a lot of ways as well. So is there another aspect to this where women, because they're so empowered and so independent and they're so able to financially support themselves as well, are willing to tolerate so little that relationships are hard to keep together now?
Like we've been enabled with the knowledge and the tools, the security, but it doesn't always work in our favour. It's not something that you should take lightly, just to walk away.
And I think for a man, actually, who is in a situation where there may be some level of abuse going on, whether it's the mother-in-law, it's a very difficult position for a man to be in because it's difficult to keep everybody happy.
I wonder if it is a difficult position for the man because, yes, you've got 2 or 3 strong characters in the family that you're trying to keep the peace with, but ultimately, as a man, you need to be able to put your foot down and decide when someone is being fair or unfair.
Regardless of what their authority is or what your relationship with them is. Right is right and wrong is wrong.
Wrong is wrong. And you have to be able to stand up when your mother is saying something wrong. Or when your wife is not compromising enough. You need to be able to make that difficult decision.
The main reason for them having that resentment against their daughter-in-law is because they want their son to be close to them. The best way to keep your son close to you is to actually treat your daughter-in-law well, and your son will automatically be close to you. If it was actually brought into the light of conscious awareness, you wouldn't behave like that. You would actually want to be loving and caring and respectful.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they were a daughter of somebody else's, and they may have daughters too. So you would want to treat the new daughter coming into the family as you would want to be treated, or how you would want your daughter to be treated.
And I can imagine very, very few families probably sit down and have a conversation about their experiences, about what is or isn't working. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's not comfortable to do. But how many family relationships would change if that was actually implemented?
For me, any abuse is coming from a personal discomfort. You aren't easy in your own self. You aren't in a good place within your own self. And maybe the mother-in-law has lived decades of suppression in their own lives, and their only love that they can cling to is their son, and now the only thing that gives them joy is being taken away from them. So they are suffering themselves. The person doing the abuse is also in internal turmoil. There are so many times where you think you might come from a religious family, or you're doing things that you think are of a spiritual nature, but spirituality means nothing if you haven't actually fixed who you are inside. If you're not compassionate, if you're not kind with your words, if you're not considerate of other people's feelings, then all of your spirituality is really a waste of time. And the Guru specifically says, well, what do you think you're doing?
But if you sift through all of the angered voice and the confrontation or the physical abuse, whatever it is, if you sift through all of that and you go down to the core is that everyone is searching for love, and the perpetrator is searching for the same thing. You just cry out and you call out for it in a different way.
In their own screwed up way, really.
In their own screwed up way. Yeah.